the law, L-A-W, of conservation of energy. And what is this law? It basically says you can't create it, you can't destroy it. Now, who created energy? What do you think? Yeah. All energies are coming from Krishna. And the symbol of that is the sun. The sun is diffusing energy throughout the whole universe. Now, last week we were studying the carbon cycle. You were here, right? You weren't here? Okay. You were here, right? Now, the carbon cycle means something that's going around. It begins somewhere, it goes in different places, it comes back again, and then goes again. It's a cycle. And if you understand the law of conservation of energy, you're going to understand all these cycles that we're going to study. There's the carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, water cycle, wind cycle. These are the things that keeps the earth self-sufficient, healthy, right? No matter how much we contaminate things, nature can fix it. Why? Because this whole process is created by Krishna. He's in charge as Lord, in his expansion as Lord Vishnu. He has to maintain the material creation. There's Brahma, who is the secondary creator. Krishna creates all the energies and substance. And then Brahma puts them into action by making living entities. When I say making living entities, Krishna also injects the souls like us into the material nature. And then Brahma creates the different species, the different bodies in which the souls take birth. There's 8,400,000 different types of species or bodies, right? And each one has a certain way of trying to enjoy the material nature, but actually they can't enjoy that much. It's mostly suffering. If you look in the material, in the animal world, you'll see it's almost all suffering, very little happiness. And human beings, there's mixed, some happiness and some suffering, mostly suffering, but some happiness also, but material happiness. So all that is a lesson to us that instead of trying to make a permanent position in the material world to be happy, we should use this body and intelligence that we have as human beings for self-realization and become liberated from this whole cycle of birth and death. There's a cycle of birth and death also, right? Okay, good. So you're going to put it on the board also, right? Yeah. So you're going to see up here the carbon cycle. We're going to go over it. But this is the preliminary part of the carbon cycle. It's first the law of conservation of energy. It means you cannot create, human beings cannot create energy, they cannot destroy it. But obviously it's already created, right? Otherwise there wouldn't be a law of conservation of energy. But they understand that by this law that they can't create it, they can't destroy it. But it can be transformed into different types of energy. And the carbon cycle is one of the cycles of transformation of energy, right? Okay, so now, when you understand these different cycles in nature, then you see how Krishna is the greatest scientist. No one has come even close to him. All the scientists are doing is just discovering for themselves what already exists. They didn't create anything. When you talk to them, you think, oh, they're so smart, they know everything. They hardly know anything about nature. And the little they know, it creates more questions in their mind because it shows the complexity of the nature. of nature. And obviously they can see there's a greater scientist behind the whole thing because it's all functioning perfectly. Okay, so in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it says, this is in the first canto, chapter 2, it says, in the beginning of the material creation, this says, canto 1, chapter 2, text 30, 1, 2, 30 in the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the beginning of material creation, the absolute personality of Godhead, Vasudeva or Krishna, in his transcendental position, created the energies of cause and effect by his own internal energy. You see, Krishna is the source of all energy. So he created the energy of cause and effect by his own internal energy. Well, you can't do anything without energy. Can your cell phone work without energy? Can your car work without energy? Can your heart work without energy? No, that's why you have to eat every day to get that energy. And now you're going to see where the energy comes from your food. You can understand it through the carbon cycle. And because the sun is the source of all energy in the universe, and the plants have a way of capturing the energy of the sun through what's called photosynthesis. A plant is basically a solar panel. Right? Solar panel just is trying to imitate what the plant does. And it captures the energy of the sun through heat and light, and it soaks up water from the ground because Krishna causes the rain to come and it falls on the ground, and then the roots of the plants are able to capture some of the water, and then the plants also breathe, just like you're breathing and I'm breathing. The plants also breathe. They breathe in carbon dioxide. That's what we exhale. When we breathe in air has oxygen, and our lungs are able to transform that oxygen, and after that transformation we inhale the oxygen, we exhale carbon dioxide. It goes into the air, and the plants inhale the carbon dioxide. Now you have water, H2O, you have carbon dioxide, CO2, and you have the heat and light of the sun. So as I said, a plant is basically a solar panel, right? It does the same thing. So it captures the heat and light of the sun, it combines it with the carbon dioxide, CO2, and water, H2O, and it produces glucose. All right? Now, what is glucose? Glucose is the source of all material energy. Krishna is the source of all energies, but glucose is the energy that we need in order to stay alive. Now, I'm going to give you the chemical formula of glucose. This is very important because from glucose you can make oil, you can make gas, you can make coal. All these things, like the gasoline, makes your car run. The coal makes the factories run. And from the factories, you produce electricity. And the oil makes your car run, you see? And all that is coming from the plants that capture energy sun and make glucose. So I'm going to give you the formula of glucose now. Write this down. C6H12O6. C6H12O6. No, you don't need any spaces. C6H12O6. Oh, you can make space to read it easier. C6H12O6. That means there's 6 carbon atoms, 12 hydrogen atoms, and 6 oxygen atoms. This is glucose. Now, we said this before. If you go to the hospital and you're very sick, and let's say you're on a respirator, that means they put some tubes down your throat and go into your lungs so you can breathe, because you're not able to breathe, right? So they put oxygen directly into you. Now you can't eat because you have these tubes in your tongue, in your throat. So what do they do? Have you ever gone to the hospital and seen someone like that? Never? You did? Okay. So how does the person stay alive? They can't drink, they can't eat. How do they keep them alive? They insert a needle into one of their veins, and they have a tube with glucose in it. Glucose is basically the most simple sugar, right? When you digest food, you break it down from complex carbohydrates. There's very big molecules called carbohydrates. And you break it down to sugar. And carbohydrates and glucose, these are all called hydrocarbons. Hydro. Hydro. Carbons. Hydrocarbons. A hydrocarbon is made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. It's called an organic molecule. Organic. There's organic and inorganic. So this is all life is made of hydrocarbons or organic molecules. So the plant is actually a factory, right? It takes water up from the ground, H2O. It takes carbon dioxide from the air, CO2, and energy from the sun in the form of heat and light, and it makes this chemical called glucose, C6H12O6. Right? 6 atoms of carbon, 12 atoms of hydrogen, and 6 atoms. I'm sorry. Yeah, C6H. So, 1 second. C6H12O6 and 6 atoms of oxygen. Puts them together, and now you have a simple sugar called glucose. And when the plant dies, it falls down into the ground, and then eventually it's compacted. All these different plants that die, and also animals die, human beings die. They're all composted. And there's 2 things that happen. One is called the fast carbon cycle. We studied that last week, but we're going to go over it again. And the other is called the slow carbon cycle. They're both cycles, right? It's something that goes around. It begins here, many transformations take place, it comes back again to the original point. So the long carbon cycle produces coal, oil, and gas. The slow carbon cycle produces carbon dioxide from the plant, right, that decomposes. And what did the plant produce? It produced glucose, right? C6H12O6. Now, when it gets compacted like this, one byproduct is carbon dioxide. It goes back into the atmosphere, right? But other things happen too. So it can make organic compost. Now that compost makes plants grow. One example are trees. You know how big the trees are here? How did it get so big? It's a plant, right? How did it get so big? It's getting all its energy from the ground and from the sun. It's getting the carbon from the ground, nitrogen from the air, and no, I'm sorry, it's getting nitrogen from the ground and carbon from the ground, and it's getting oxygen from the air, and it just keeps growing and growing. Like, some of these trees, look how big they are, right? You can see them. These are huge evergreen trees. That's called a fir tree. Those are most of the big trees are fir trees, but there are other big trees too. Look how big they are. This is just a plant. It started from a little seed like that, right? And it got all its energy from the sun and the ground because of the carbon cycle. Okay? And the main source of the energy was the glucose. The glucose that becomes composted and then and so forth. So here Krishna says, Bhagavad Gita 1:2-30, in the beginning of the material creation, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, in his transcendental position, created the energies of cause and effect by his own internal energy. So Krishna is the source of all energies. Now, you were in here, you have to write this down. This whole thing begins with the law of conservation of energy. You have to write this down. The law of conservation of energy. And your homework for next week is to explain what is the law of conservation of energy. Basically, the law of conservation of energy says you can't create energy and you can't destroy energy. Where's the energy coming from? Yeah, that's why you can't create it and you can't destroy it, because it's coming from Krishna. Anything coming from Krishna is eternal. And Krishna says, 10th chapter, 8th verse, that he's the source of all material and spiritual energies. You and I are one energy of Krishna. We call his marginal energy. We're coming from Krishna originally, and in the form of a soul. Krishna has a soul, we also have a soul. And we come from Krishna. And our soul is the source of all energy in this body. That's another cycle we're going to talk about. We're going to go through a series of different cycles that Krishna created that makes the earth self-sufficient. No matter how much contamination human beings produce, the earth can recycle it through these cycles and make it new again. Okay. So the law of conservation of energy, that's your homework. You have to write about it. You have to explain what it is. And there are many. Okay, Prabhu, look up law of conservation of energy, and put up on the board, put up on the screen the cycle of the law of conservation of energy. Energy obviously exists because they wouldn't say there's a law of conservation of energy. But conservation, CONSERVATION, means it cannot be created, it cannot be destroyed, because it's coming from Krishna. And there's another point about it. It's infinite. There's no end to it. That they don't write, but as part of the law. But it's infinite. It's unending. You cannot measure. You cannot measure it because it's coming originally from Krishna. Okay, so now the next verse in Bhagavatam 1:2-31 says that after Krishna created the material substance, this first verse, Canto 1, Chapter 2, verse 30 says that in the beginning of material creation, Krishna created the energy of cause and effect by his own internal energy. And then he says, Sukadeva Goswami says, after creating the material substance. Now, substance is something that you can hold and measure. Like let's say you take some dirt, you can actually hold it and squeeze it, you can weigh it, you can measure it. So a substance is something that has properties, such as it has a property such as weight, volume, color, all these, it has different properties, right? You can actually hold it. So Krishna created cause and effect. So everything has a cause and an effect in the material world. And Krishna is both the cause and the effect. Krishna is the cause and Balaram is the effect. Therefore it says cause and effect are one, because Balaram is the first expansion from Krishna. Balaram is supporting everything Krishna does. So Krishna creates and Balaram supports. Right? So there's cause and effect. But cause and effect confuse people. Just like, you know, when you left the house, you had $10 in your pocket. And when you were outside the house, you didn't buy anything. But when you come home, there's no $10 in your pocket. So now you're trying to figure out what happened to the $10. What do you think happened to the $10? That's one possibility. Huh? Someone stole it. That's another possibility. No, you didn't buy anything. You just went out of the house, and then later on you came back. You had you had the $10 in your pocket when you went out. You didn't buy anything. Then you came back. There's no $10. So now you're trying to figure out the cause and effect. So now there's two possibilities. Either it fell out of your pocket, or someone pickpocketed you. Right? Now, which one is it? Huh? You don't know. You don't know. You see, cause and effect are very confusing in the material world. Right? So, but a devotee knows Krishna is the cause and Balaram is the effect. Balaram is the first expansion of Krishna. So Krishna is the cause and effect. Right? And he created that. He created cause and effect. What does that mean? Just like he creates the material world, right? That means there's no cause and effect in the spiritual world. Everything is coming from Krishna, and everyone can see it. But in the material world, people don't see it, that everything is coming from Krishna. Therefore, they get confused by cause and effect. This is science. You're not going to learn this in school. They don't teach it like this. And that's why a lot of people get confused by science and math, both of those things. Because unless you understand what is the origin of everything, you can't really understand clearly what things are or how to use them. Like a lot of kids have trouble with math because it's there are many problems you have to solve, and some kids get good at it, and a lot of kids have trouble with it. And science also, a lot of kids have trouble with science because you don't know where it starts, and you don't know exactly where it stops. You only know the middle. If you put some things together, you get something else, right? Or if you can solve this problem by doing this and that in math. But you don't understand the origin, you don't understand the end. You just understand the middle. So, because they don't have an explanation for the origin, and they don't have an explanation for the end. They can just tell you what happens in the middle. Okay, so now this next verse says, after creating the material substance, the Lord, or Krishna, expands himself and enters into it. And although he is within the material modes of nature and appears to be one of the created beings, he is always fully enlightened in his transcendental position. That means that the reason why nature works, and especially these cycles, which we're going to study very carefully, beginning with the carbon cycle, the reason it works is because Krishna is present as Paramatma in every atom of the material nature and in the heart of every living entity. That's why it works. It's not working on its own. They'll try and convince you in school that nature works on its own. There's no outside source of it. It's just matter, and it has its own way of working. And it creates its own energy. And this is nonsense. It's not true. It's a false concept. Have you studied anything like this? Yeah, everything comes from. And nature creates its own energy. It's self-creating. See, and that's a false idea. So here's what the Bhagavatam. Now you have the exact verses in the Bhagavatam. It's saying that after Krishna created substance, that means earth, water, fire, air, ether, things that you can measure and you can hold and you can see, right? He enters into the substance. So the word for substance in Sanskrit is called dravya. Right? He enters into it, and even though he enters into it, he's not influenced by it. We're influenced. We forget. We get tired. We have to sleep. We wake up. You eat. You have to pass stool, and you get conditioned by all these things, right? Krishna is not conditioned. He's not subject to them, and he's not subject to time. He's the controller of time. Time comes from him also. So we see that there's something transcendental in this matter that's making it work. And the scientists are trying to convince you there's nothing transcendental. The matter works on its own. You see. But yet, they create things that don't work on their own. Like you create a cell phone. This doesn't work unless you put energy into it. If your battery doesn't work, it doesn't work. The cell phone, it can be perfect, but no battery with energy, it doesn't work. Right? And the energy comes from the outside. It's not, the cell phone does not produce the energy itself. The cell phone uses the energy and runs out of it, and then you have to fill it up with energy again. They're coming from the outside. Where's the energy coming from? Coming originally from the sun, that's transformed by plants, plants are basically solar panels and factories. And the plants make glucose, which is a simple sugar, and it keeps us alive, because when we eat, we digest the food and we break it down to glucose, which enters into the blood, and the blood goes through the whole body and feeds all our cells with that energy of glucose, right? And then later on, glucose, after the plants die and they go into the earth, it's compacted, and that's the carbon cycle. And eventually, in this fast carbon cycle, it releases carbon dioxide back into the air and makes compost, which becomes rich with the nutrients of carbon and nitrogen and so many things, and that makes the plants grow, right? But that's the fast carbon cycle. The slow carbon cycle eventually makes oil, gas, and coal. And those are the sources of energy for our factories and cars and heating in our house, right? It's all coming from the plants, which are capturing the energy of the sun and making glucose. Okay, but the energy of the sun, where's that coming from? Coming from Krishna. And there's the law of conservation of energy, which says you can't create it, you can't destroy it. That means man can't create the energy coming into the universe, and they can't destroy it. And the energy is just cycling. It's changing, it's being altered in many different ways. Like, for example, glucose or the carbon cycle is one cycle of altering the energy, and then it goes back to the original form again. Okay. So then in verse number 32, Canto 1, Chapter 2, verse number 32 says that the super soul pervades everything. In other words, he's present, Krishna is present in everything. Just as fire permeates wood, and so he appears to be of many varieties, although he is absolute. He is the absolute one without a second. So, is there fire in wood? Yes. Because when you add heat to the wood, it catches fire, and then you see there's fire in wood. Why? Because the wood is made of carbon and glucose and so forth. And therefore, when you heat it up, it catches fire. See, so there is fire, but you can't see the fire in the wood. Right? Like you're looking at the tree, you don't see fire in the wood. But if you add fire to it, then the fire in the wood comes out. See? Because it's full of this energy that's stored in the form of glucose and so forth. So glucose is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So when you burn the wood, it releases carbon, it releases oxygen, and hydrogen back into the air. Right? When it rains, the rain comes down and it captures the carbon in the air and oxygen, and it makes something called carbonic acid. And that falls down on the ground and eventually goes through the ground into underground rivers. Those rivers go into the ocean, and it makes what's called calcite. Calcite is a mineral, and calcite eventually goes on the bottom of the ocean floor, and it makes what's called limestone or calcium carbonate. Also, you have the shells of oysters and clams and things. It's made. They also make calcium carbonate. All that comes together, and it makes the Dover Hills. Have you ever heard of the Dover Hills? They're the big hills on the shore of England, and it's all calcium carbonate. All the toothpaste you use to brush your teeth made with calcium carbonate. They get it from the Dover Hills. They also have the same type of hills in Canada, and so you see, this is part of the carbon cycle. So now we're going to go back into the carbon cycle, and Agastya's mom made a suggestion to help us have a better PowerPoint presentation of carbon cycle. We haven't incorporated it yet. Did you see that, Agastya? Yeah. Okay. I start every phrase with yes, no, I don't know, Stop doing that. It's a bad habit. Okay. Here, let's go back to the first frame of the carbon cycle. This is not the first frame. Now, we explained how all energy comes from Krishna. And the scientists have perceived that there's a law of conservation of energy, which means you can't create it, you can't destroy it. Why? Because it's coming from Krishna. But we're going to add one other point to the law of conservation of energy. It's infinite. The scientists don't say that, but we can say it because we know it's coming from Krishna. So there's infinite energy coming into this world from Krishna. And you can't create, and human beings can't create it, and they can't destroy it. So this law of conservation of energy is very important to understand. Then you can see the origin of everything material. So now, in the Bhagavatam, again, we're going back to Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam will teach you science. It'll teach you mathematics. It'll teach you everything. You don't have to study these other books. You just study Srimad Bhagavatam. And you'll understand all these subjects. And you'll see the origin, the middle, and the end. Whereas you study the same subject in school, you don't see the origin, you see the middle, but you don't see the end. So they don't deal with the beginning and the end. They just deal with the middle. Therefore, you get an incomplete understanding of science and mathematics. So, third canto, 26th verse, 49th, 26th chapter, 49th verse says that since the cause exists in its effect. So what's the cause? What do we say was the cause of everything? And what's the effect of everything? Balaram, which is an expansion of Krishna, right? since the cause exists in its effect, so the cause, let's say a mother scorpion goes into a paddy field, a rice field, right? You didn't see her go in. And she lays eggs, and then she comes out. So she did that at night. So you didn't see her go in, you didn't see her come out. But later on, you see baby scorpions coming out of the rice field. And rice field is filled with water, right? And there's a hot sun, and the water, things are fermenting in the water. That's what hatches the egg. Just like a bird sits on the egg, and eventually it hatches into a little bird. Why does she sit on it? Keep it warm. So the scorpion's smart, right? They go into water of the rice field, and they lay their eggs, and then naturally the sun is shining in India and in all these countries where they grow rice. They grow rice in Sacramento area, also in California. It gets very hot in the summertime. So it heats up that water and keeps the eggs alive, because if it froze, the eggs would freeze and they would die, right? Or if they didn't die, they wouldn't grow. So, and then eventually the body of the little scorpion is produced in the egg, and then it cracks the egg and it comes out. So the farmers, they didn't see the mother scorpion at night go into the rice field. They didn't see her lay her eggs there, and they didn't see her come out. But they do see the baby scorpions come out. Now, what's the cause and the effect here? They only see the baby scorpions come out. So what do they think is the cause? No, they didn't see the mother scorpion go in. Huh? Yeah, so what do they think? They're thinking, what's the cause of this? Huh? They think it's the rice field is the cause, because they didn't see the scorpion go in, mother scorpion go in, and come out. They didn't see her lay her eggs. So they think it's the rice field is the cause. Is that true? It's not true at all. This is what the scientists are doing. They don't know anything about the origin of the material creation. Okay? So they're making all kinds of crazy theories. That material nature just makes everything on its own by accident, called the law of, they're called Darwin's theory of evolution. It's a theory, right? And he says things just happen by accident, by what you call permutations and combinations. These are two big words, but it means that over a long period of time, nature experiments with itself, putting things together. Most of the things don't work, but every once in a while, one thing works, and it becomes an amoeba. And then again, nature puts things together, and most of the things don't work. But then one thing works. Now you have a two-cell living entity. You started with a one-cell amoeba, now you have a two-cell living entity. And then over a long period of time, nature puts things together by accident, and most of the things don't work. But one thing works, now you have a three-cell living entity, right? So you say, it's a bunch of nonsense. It's not true. But they're teaching you that. The nature creates on its own. Yeah. So here, in the purport, you can read, sound is the cause of the sky. So what does that mean? That means in the beginning of time, if you read the Brahma Samhita, it says that Krishna begins the material creation with subtle sound. What is that subtle sound? The Om Pranava. This is explained in Brahma Samhita, this book. So it says here, it says first, Ishvara Parama Krishna. It says, Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful, spiritual body. He is the origin of all. His body is the origin of everything. He has no other origin, and he's the prime cause of all causes. So, you have a body. Your body is also a chemical factory. What does your body produce? Give me one thing your body produces. Stool. Yeah. Stool has a chemical formula to it. Yeah. Yes. Sweat. Yes. What else? What does your body produce, Augustine? Blood. Yeah, blood is... No scientist has ever been able to recreate blood synthetically. They have not been able. They can create parts of it, but never the whole thing. Okay. Yes, Ria. Tears. Yeah, tears are different than sweat. They might look alike, but they're different, right? Anything else? You know anything your body produces? Huh? Pee. Yeah, that's also a chemical. Yeah. And by the way, pee, human pee and cow pee, is excellent fertilizer. It puts nitrogen into the ground. It's a wonderful fertilizer. All plants need nitrogen to grow quickly and to become green. Yes. Yeah, your body produces cells. Yeah. Yes. Mucus, yeah, it produces mucus. Right? Yeah. Nails, yeah. How about teeth? Hair. How about wax? In your ear. You see, so your body's a chemical factory. So Krishna's body is the source of everything. When he sweats, it produces oceans and rivers and streams and rivulets and things like that, And then his bones are mountains. The mountains are produced from his bones, you see. So just like your body is producing so many things, Krishna's body is producing everything. He's the source of all energy. Huh? Yeah, sound, definitely. So sound is the beginning of creation. So let me see where that verse is. So it says, yeah. See, it doesn't, because it's talking about, it talks about the spiritual world and the material world. Therefore, you have to go a bunch of pages before you come to the creation of the material world. One second. So, when you come up to the creation of Brahma, so Krishna will teach Brahma the Gayatri mantra. And all the Gayatri mantras, they begin with Om. Okay, so then it says here on verse 27 of Brahma Samhita, then Gayatri, mother of the Vedas, being made manifest, imparted by the divine sound of the flute of Shri Krishna, entered into the lotus mouth of Brahma, born from himself, through his 8 ear holes. The lotus-born Brahma, having received the Gayatri, sprung from the flute song of Shri Krishna, attained the status of twice-born, having been initiated by the supreme primal preceptor, Godhead himself. So, Krishna plays his flute, and from the flute appears the Gayatri mantra that enters into the mind of Brahma, and he becomes enlightened with knowledge. So it says, enlightened by the recollection of that Gayatri, embodying the 3 Vedas, Brahma became acquainted with the expanse of the ocean of truth. Then he worshipped Sri Krishna, the essence of all Vedas, with this hymn. And then he says, I worship Govinda, and so forth. And then it begins with the verses that we know, Chintamani Prakarasadma Sukalpa Riksha. Right? So the creation is beginning with the sound of the flute of Krishna, and the Gayatri mantra, which begins with Om. So this is what creates space. So it says sound is the cause of the sky. Well, sky means space or ether. Sky is the cause of the air. Air is the cause of fire. Fire is the cause of water. And water is the cause of earth. In the sky, there's only sound. In the air, there are sound and touch. In the fire, there are sound, touch, and form. In water, there are sound, touch, form, and taste. And in the earth, there are sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. Therefore, earth is the reservoir of all the qualities of the other elements. So in earth, you have sound, touch, taste, smell, and form. Right? Earth is the sum total of all other elements. The earth has all 5 qualities of the elements. Water has 4, fire has 3, air has 2, and sky has only 1 quality, sound. Okay, so now we see everything begins from the sound, originally from the flute of Krishna, and then the Gayatri mantra, which begins with Om. And that expands the sky, right? So this is the beginning of material creation, not spiritual creation. Spiritual creation is eternal. It's the beginning of material creation. Material creation is eternal, but it goes through 2 phases. Sometimes it's manifest, sometimes it's not manifest. So the energy of the material creation is eternal. That's why the law of conservation of energy says you can't produce it, you can't create it, you can't destroy it. Okay? So that's where the scientists pick up the story of creation. They say there's the law of conservation of energy, which you can't create, you can't destroy. Obviously, it's created. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any energy to talk about. All right? So the scientists begin with the conservational law of energy. The conservational law of energy is it's like in the middle of the story. It's not the beginning of the story. Okay, so then this next verse, Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 25, 125. So go to the second frame. It says, the 5 material elements are existing inside and outside of every living entity. Similarly, I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, am manifest within the heart of the devotee as well as outside his body. So, this verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita is explained also before in the Srimad Bhagavatam by Canto 1, Chapter 2, verses 30, 31, and 32. Okay? So, here in the purport, Prabhupada says, the pure devotee knows that he is the servant of Krishna eternally. He knows that everything can be used in the service of the Lord. What does that mean? That means that everything you see is created from Krishna's own energies. Therefore, it belongs to Krishna. Therefore, we can use, when you're an advanced devotee, you can know how to use everything in Krishna's service because it all belongs to him. That's called Krishna consciousness. So that's real science. Learning how to use everything in the service of Krishna because it all belongs to him. He's present in every atom of the material nature, and therefore it should only be used for him. So now we come, next one is Bhagavad Gita 7.4. Bhumir apo nalo vayu kam mano buddharevacha hankaram ityame bina pakritarastata. This explains the 8 fundamental elements of creation, which are expanded into 24. But it says earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego constitute my separated material energies. So, our body, you're looking at your body right now, it's made up of earth, water, fire, air, ether. You also have a mind, you have intelligence, and you have a false ego. So, one of the elements of your body is called carbon. It makes up 18% of your body, right? And This carbon comes from the earth. That's why in the Bible it says, earth thou art, and earth thou shalt become. In other words, your body is made of earth, 18% of it, and water, at least 78%. And the earth is made up of what? It has water, fire, air, ether, and so forth. And when you die, you go back to the earth. Your body goes back to the earth. Srila Prabhupada.
ಯಶೋಮತಿ ನಂದನ ಬ್ರಜಬರ ನಾಗರ ಗೋಕುಲ ರಂಜನ ಕಾನ ಗೋಪಿ ಪರನದನ ಮದನ ಮನೋಹರ ಗೋಪಿ ಪರನದನ ಮದನ ಮನೋಹರ ಕಾಲಿಯ ದಮನ ವಿಧಾನ ಅಮಲ ಹರಿನಾಮಮಿಯ ವಿಲಾಸ ಆಮಲ ಹರಿನಾಮಮಿಯ ವಿಲಾಸ ವಿಪಿನ ಪುರಂದರ ನವೀನ ನಗರ ಬರ ವಂಶಿ ಬದನ ಸುವಾಸ ಪ್ರಜನ ಪಾಲನ ಸುರಕುಲ ನಾಸನ ಪ್ರಜನ ಪಾಲನ ಸುರಕುಲ ನಾಸನ ನಂದ ಗೋದನ ರಖವಾಲ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಮಾಧವ ನವನೀತ ತಾಸ್ಕರ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಮಾಧವ ನವನೀತ ತಾಸ್ಕರ ಸುಂದರ ನಂದ ಗೋಪಾಲ ಜಾಮುನ ತಟಚರ ಗೋಪಿ ಬಸನ ಹರ ರಾಸ ರಸಿಕ ಕೃಪ ಮೋಯ ಜಾಮುನ ತಟಚರ ಗೋಪಿ ಬಸನ ಹರ ರಾಸ ರಸಿಕ ಕೃಪ ಮೋಯ ಶ್ರೀರಾಧ ವಲ್ಲಭ ಬೃಂದಾವನ ನಟಬರ ಶ್ರೀರಾಧ ವಲ್ಲಭ ಬೃಂದಾವನ ನಟಬರ ಭಕ್ತಿ ವಿನೋದ ಶ್ರಾಯ ಯಶೋಮತಿ ನಂದನ ಬ್ರಜಬರ ನಾಗರ ಗೋಕುಲ ರಂಜನ ಕಾನ ಜಯೋ ರಾಧಾ ನೀಲ ಮಾಧವ ರಾಧಾ ನೀಲ ಮಾಧವ ರಾಧೆ ಜಯೋ ರಾಧಾ ನೀಲ ಮಾಧವ ರಾಧಾ ನೀಲ ಮಾಧವ ರಾಧೆ Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha, Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha, Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha, Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha. Jayo Sita Ram, Jayo Sita Ram, Jayo Sita Ram, Jayo Lakshman Hanuman. Jayo Jagannatha, Jayo Jagannatha, Jayo Baladeva, Jayo Subhadra. Jayo Gauranita, Jayo Gauranita, Jayo Gauranita, Jayo Gauranita. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Now we're going to begin to go into the carbon cycle. When you understand all these different cycles, which we're going to study one by one, you'll see that Krishna has made the world self-sufficient. Mankind cannot, just like we can't destroy energy, we can't create energy, we can't destroy the material world, nor can we create it. We can only disrupt it a little bit, but Krishna has these cycles that straightens out our disruption. So this whole idea that the world's coming to an end if we don't spend so much money to stop carbon fuels and this and that, we have to go solar, this, it's all nonsense. It's not true. It's a scare tactic. But rather than misuse Krishna's energies, if we cooperate with them, and one way to cooperate is using the carbon cycle for farming, where you grow much better quality food with more nutrients in the food, where you're not destroying the environment by pumping in artificial fertilizers and pesticides and things like that. So this is real science now, when we learn to cooperate with the cycles that Krishna has created, and we understand how they work, then we can make better food, which means better health and better soil and better atmosphere, better rivers. Then That's real science, to make things better. But to make big factories that are using coal and pouring huge amounts of carbon into the air and fossil fuels, burning them, and again putting too much carbon in the air, and then people breathe it in. And so if you go to India, if you live in Delhi, you'll have respiratory problems because the air is full of too much carbon. Jai Shri Radha Nilamadava Ki Jai. A lot of people have respiratory problems in India because of the contamination. And there are water problems in India. You can easily get diarrhea or more serious diseases by drinking water if you're not careful in India. That's why most people don't drink water from the tap. They just drink bottled water. And even the bottled water sometimes is contaminated. So, you see, because they're not cooperating with the carbon cycle. So now we're going to learn more about this carbon cycle. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 20th chapter, 259th verse, it says, by the agency of the material energy, this same Lord Sankarsan is Vishnu form, this expansion of Krishna, right? Creates all the universes. The dull material energy, known in modern language as nature, is not the cause of the material universe. So here's a verse that clearly says that nature is not the cause of the material universe. And the scientists are trying to tell you that nature is the cause of everything. You see? So they're actually lying. So then the next, another verse, Madhya Lila 20:216. Without the Supreme Personality of Godhead's energy, dull matter cannot create the cosmic manifestation. Its power does not arise from material energy itself, but is endowed by Sankarsan, or Krishna. So, dull matter can't create anything. Just like when your body dies, it does not regenerate itself. Right? It's dull matter. But yet it serves as food for other living entities, such as worms and rats and birds. They'll come and eat your dead body, and they'll derive energy from your body. Because even a dead body, what is a dead body? When it composts, the energy in the body goes back into the earth or into the air. So therefore, different living entities like worms and birds, they'll eat your body and get energy from it. You know? But your body doesn't create itself. It can't come back alive again. When the soul leaves the body, the soul is the source of all the energy in the body. There's two souls in the body. There's Krishna and your soul. Those are the sources of energy in the body. When they leave your body, then your body does not reconstruct itself. That proves that power does not arise from the material energy itself, but it comes from originally Krishna. And then next verse, 261, dull matter alone cannot create anything. The material energy produces the creation by the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just like this cell phone is dull matter, but when you put the battery in it, it looks like it works. You take the battery out, it's just dull matter. It doesn't work. So if Krishna is not present in every atom, and if the jiva is not present in a particular body, the body won't function. The material energy produces the creation by the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Iron itself has no power to burn, but when iron is placed in fire, it is empowered to burn. So if you put a piece of iron, if you just hold a piece of iron, it's not hot naturally, and it doesn't burn anything. But you put it in a fire, and it collects the energy from the fire. The iron becomes red hot, and if you touch it, you will burn. Or if you touch it to something else, it'll burn. You see, so the energy is coming from an outside source. The scientists try to say material nature produces its own energy. It's not true. The The energy is coming from an outside source, just like it's not true that this cell phone produces its own energy. It has to come from an outside source. To get even more deeper into the question, there was a mathematician named Gödel. He was a friend with Einstein. They were both professors in Yale. Gödel was a brilliant mathematician. I would say more brilliant than Einstein. And he said, he came up with the theory of indeterminacy. That is, he said, you take anything. Let's say you take this microphone. So you make a circle around it. To understand a microphone, you cannot understand it by the microphone itself. You have to go outside of the microphone to understand it. So now you make a circle around the whole material creation. Gödel's theorem of indeterminacy says it's still applicable. To understand the whole material creation, you would have to go outside of it to understand it. So what does that mean? That means to understand this microphone, you would have to go outside. You would have to go to the manufacturer of the microphone to understand the microphone. Even if you take it apart, you will not understand everything about the microphone. And also, for the microphone to work, it's got to receive energy from outside. It doesn't produce its own energy. So to understand anything, you have to go outside of it to understand it. So it's the same with the creation. The scientists are trying to say, no, you can understand everything in creation by creation itself, by nature itself. It's not true. That's why they say the law of conservation of energy. Energy is something you can't create, you can't destroy. But it's already created. How did it get there? You see. The energy is coming from Krishna. You have to go outside to understand. You can't understand it simply by this thing in itself. Okay, and then the last verse, 262, says, Balarama and Krishna are the original efficient and material causes. What do we say? So when Krishna created cause and effect, what's the cause? What's the effect? Balaram. And here it is. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 262. Balaram and Krishna are the original efficient and material causes of the material world. Okay, what does that mean? The efficient cause and material cause. Like, for example, the mother is the material cause of the body of the baby because it's made in her body. But the father is the efficient cause. He supplies the soul. It's not him. The soul is supplied by Krishna, but it goes through him. So he's considered the efficient cause, and the mother is considered the material cause of the baby. Same way, Krishna is the efficient cause, because everything is coming from him. And Balaram is the material cause, because Balaram is supporting everything Krishna does. So we would say, as Mahavishnu and the material energy, they enter into the material elements and create the diversities by multi-energies. Thus, they are the cause of all causes. So, Krishna, in this expansion of Mahavishnu, expands the material energy and enters into it as Shirodakshaya Vishnu, and then everything comes together, starts working. Okay, so that's just to give some more depth to the understanding of the original cause and effect of everything. So now, next one, we come to the understanding carbon, an element found in earth, plants, humans, and animals. So what is carbon? It's a chemical element, and it's the backbone of life and earth. So you see that. Can you actually read that? Yeah, okay. Carbon gets its name from the Latin word carbo, which means coal. Carbon is a non-metal that has the following common forms: diamond, graphite, charcoal, soot, and coal. So all those things, even a diamond is made of carbon. Can you believe it? Even a diamond is made of carbon. Your body is also made with carbon. But it's in its natural forms. You have diamonds, graphite, which is a very soft form of carbon. You have charcoal, you have soot, and you have coal. And then carbon is the fourth most abundant element in the universe. Carbon is also part of the ocean, air, and even rocks. So rock is solid carbon. Right? Carbon in nature is found in three forms: diamond, graphite, and fullerenes. A fullerene is a molecule of carbon in the form of a hollow sphere, ellipsoid, tube, and many other shapes. Anyway, we don't want to get too complicated. But in the atmosphere, carbon combines with oxygen to form carbon dioxide. That's what we inhale air, and then we exhale carbon dioxide. Plants use carbon dioxide and sunlight to make their own food. What is their food? Glucose. And they grow. Most of Earth's carbon is stored in rocks. All living things are made of carbon. We are about half carbon if we take out all water from our body. Okay, so carbon in our daily life. So you have diamonds used in jewelry and for industrial purposes. Diamonds are used to cut metal and other things. They have tools with diamonds that can cut things. So anyway, you get the idea. I'm not going to go through that whole thing. So next, carbon in Krishna's service. How do we use carbon in Krishna's service? Well, carbon is in incense sticks. So we burn incense for Krishna. And it releases smoke, which is carbon. And carbon and other things have fire in them. So incense sticks are made with either charcoal or wood powder. So carbon is in charcoal, it's 100%, and in wood, it's a large percentage of the wood. So it releases energy. Carbon is used in paint, so you paint the deities. And carbon is used in deity dresses, made with natural fibers. Now, can you think of more places where carbon is used in deity service? That's another homework you have. Can you think of more places where carbon is used in deity service? Okay. Okay, next. Now we're going to talk about the carbon-nitrogen ratio. Ratio means how much carbon and nitrogen are together. All organic matter has a ratio of carbon to nitrogen in their tissues. That means plants, human beings, and so forth. For microorganisms, carbon is the basic building block of life and is a source of energy. But nitrogen is also necessary for such things as proteins, genetic material, and cell structure. Now, we're going to send you this by email, so you'll have this whole text. Decomposition of organic materials in your compost pile is greatly increased when you create the proper balance between the carbonaceous materials called brown because they are dry and the nitrogen-rich materials called green because they are more fresh and moist. In compost language, or lingo, this balance is referred to as the carbon-nitrogen ratio and known as CN. C:(N). So, this summer, what we're going to do, if you have time, you can come to the farm and we're going to make a compost pile. And I'm going to show you how you make it. So there's the right ratio of nitrogen to carbon. The correct ratio of nitrogen to carbon is 25 nitrogen, 1 carbon. So carbon, brown things like leaves, they supply the carbon. And the nitrogen are green things like fresh grass. They supply the nitrogen. So if you put 25-1 grass to carbon, and you add water and oxygen, you make compost. And what happens when you make compost correctly? It heats up to 140, 150, 160 degrees, and it decomposes everything. And you end up with this black humus, black compost, and you use that for growing the next season. So this is the carbon cycle, and all the food we eat is based on it. If it's not functioning properly, then nothing will grow. So the scientists, in order to make money, they created what's called NPK fertilizer. What is that? Nitrogen, potassium, and NPK. And what? Phosphate, yeah. And P is not potassium. P is phosphate, and K is potassium. So, real humus or real compost doesn't just have NPK in it, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. It has over 90 trace minerals that the plants need. But if you just use NPK, you go to Home Depot and you buy NPK fertilizer, everything will grow, but it will not have the full spectrum of minerals in it. Therefore, it's not nutrient-rich food. It's nutrient-depleted food. But when you grow with real compost, you get what's called medicinal food because it has all the minerals in it that your body needs. Your body doesn't need a large amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. It needs some nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. But it also needs a little bit of trace minerals of all the other 80, 90 minerals to remain healthy. And then your body will pick and choose from your food all those minerals. If you don't eat mineral-rich food or nutrient-rich food, then you can eat a lot and you still feel hungry. That's why people get fat in America, because they're eating nutrient-depleted food that's just grown with NPK fertilizer, not with compost. So organic foods are normally they should be grown with compost, not with just NPK, with all 90 plus minerals in the earth. So that people are getting fat because they're eating food that is not mineral rich. And therefore, although you eat a lot, you still feel hungry. Your body says, hey, you filled me up, but you didn't give me what I need. So eat some more. You have any fat kids in school? Huh? Yeah, because they're eating junk. That's why. Okay, so, and we'll stop on this last point. Therefore, in order to produce best performing compost, carbon in the right proportion is necessary for energy and nitrogen for protein production. Compost scientists have determined that the fastest way to produce fertile, sweet-smelling compost is to maintain the carbon-nitrogen ratio somewhere around 25 to 30 parts carbon. No, that's not correct. It should be 25 to 30 parts nitrogen to 1 part carbon. That has to be corrected. If the carbon-nitrogen ratio is too high, excess carbon, decomposition slows down. If the carbon-nitrogen ratio is too low, excess nitrogen, you'll end up with stinky compost. It'll stink. It won't be sweet. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Now your homework for next week is explain what is the law of conservation of energy, and you want to fill out other carbon used, other types of carbon used in, not types, so other places where carbon is used in deity worship. So we already said incense sticks, paint that's on the deities and colors used in deity dresses. Now think of other things that contain carbon that are offered to the deities. Okay. I give you one hint. Food. There are others. Okay? Now we're going to send this to you. You sort of look at this, read it, and I already found a few mistakes, and and there are ways of improving this. So we're going to work together to improve it, to make it more understandable for kids. Okay? So we'll work together on this, and then we will have a real demonstration of this when we go to the farm and we make compost. And if it's made right, when you put a thermometer in it, it should be the heat should be at least 140 to 150 degrees. And you'll see, in a short period of time, if we do it right, it'll break down into black soil. Yeah. See that? You're going to learn that. That's why you have to learn the law of conservation of energy. Okay? That's why I said that's your homework for next week. And that'll explain why it becomes hot. And that's a good question you asked. So you're going to learn by next week why it becomes hot. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Now this is real science. Haribol.